Okay, I'm really glad to be here with Andre and have an opportunity to do this. Thank you, Andre, for taking the time from your busy schedule to do this interview with me. Well, Andre and I, we go way back, like little kids growing up in Brazil together. He's actually my cousin, and we would often spend our summers together. We would travel to different parts of Brazil with our families. And then we went to high school together here in the States. And we've been away from each other since, for college. We went to different places. But Andre, tell us what you're up to now.
First of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here to do this with you. I've been a secret fan of yours since you started doing the podcast. I really appreciate your messages. I have a private practice in Framingham, Massachusetts. Say for the past 3.5 years. Before that, I used to work at a clinic dealing with suicidal clients, lots of self-mutilating behavior, self-harm behavior. So the vast majority of people that I see struggle from either depression or anxiety, lots of relationship issues as well. And it's been a pleasure to help in this part of the country here. I see the need is very great. So I hope with this interview we can share the joy, the joy of happiness and of recovering from these issues.
Amen. That's great. That is a problem that I see a lot. And I often have to remind people that I am a pastor. I am not a counselor. So I can only help them so much. And I understand that you have a much better, you have much more experience. And also this is your area of expertise. And I was wondering, so what have you, with this experience that you have working with people who are struggling with different mental health issues, what have you noticed some of the things that they have in common? I mean, different people, different backgrounds, that have different issues. Have you noticed anything in common, anything, an overarching theme through all of it?
Yes, that's actually a really good question. It's interesting to see the gap between age groups. For the older folks, and by older I mean 40 on. We're almost there, but that's considered, I guess, pre-millennial. Mm-hmm. You see a lot more of the guilt and the shame and this constant drive to perform, to do better, to quote, be better people. Right. And often they are weighed down with fear and anxiety about that. Now, when you go to the younger folks, it's almost like the pendulum is on the other side. Right. You don't see enough guilt. You don't see enough care. Right. The I don't care-itis is very prevalent in that age group. So the approach that we take with the younger folks has to be very different. Right, because you want to instill in them a sense of responsibility, a sense of guilt, a sense of even feeling bad about doing that, right? Because you're not going to change if you don't feel at least a little bit guilty for what you do. So that, for me, that's been quite surprising to actually see that, and it's a lot more common than you would think.
Interesting,
right? And that's been amazing. It's a learning experience for me.
And I was wondering, have you noticed things change? I mean, we're talking about this. We're in the midst of the whole COVID-19, global pandemic. And I'm noticing, at least with the people around me, a lot of uncertainty regarding the future, a lot of fear. People are on social media and they're looking things up, or it's on the news. Have you noticed that in your area of work, or what have you noticed?
Again, kind of the same issue. The parents of a lot of my clients, they are extremely concerned about this. They take the social distancing counsel very seriously. But the kids, like, oh, whatever, who cares? We're good. So again, it's a balancing act between not being too anxious or panicky about this, but not being too careless about this. Mm-hmm. Right. So that, the middle ground, I believe, is truth. Right. Let's find out what the facts are and how can we relate and interpret those facts without getting too much into what my personal thoughts are.
Mm-hmm. And you bring something really interesting, because I have come across that as I've been trying to call my church members and stay in touch, and through, there's different age groups. And it is interesting how the concern changes and even how they react to the news changes depending on some of these variables. And I know we also have different demographics. You're up there in the Northeast. I'm here in the deep South, in South Georgia. But with all of this, what have you found that what have you realized that has helped your clients? What kind of approach or what kind of thought patterns or what kind of advice or counsel has been helpful, or how do you work with that? What are some things that you think might be beneficial to people who are watching this?
Yeah, that's a great point. Interestingly enough, I know the news are there to keep us informed and to help us deal with this in probably a more wise manner. However, that can hurt, right? Too much of, quote, a good thing can overwhelm us, right? And what I've seen is, the more news people watch, the more anxious they get, because the news are constantly reminding us of things that are beyond our control, right? And people are already suffering from things that are beyond their control, right? So why would they want to add that layer of weight on them? And it's almost unnecessary because, again, they can do very little. I'm not saying they have to be careless, but if you put on your shoulders the weight of everybody who's suffering because of this, you're going to suffer, your family's going to suffer, and you're really not going to solve any problems with that, right? So I think a good approach is to maybe take a break from all the news and all the drama. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the importance of this issue, but I think we need to be a little bit more balanced in how we see this and how we face this. We can't stop living because of this. Although it's hard, we just can't give up and just be desperate about this.
So you touched on something there that I found really interesting. And I remember reading a book by Neil Postman where he talks about how news over time became more about entertainment. News used to be a neighbor running down the street saying, the barn is on fire. Everybody would go there and help put out the fire. There was something you could do about it. But now the news is about something so distant and so far away. People sometimes are looking for that awe factor, to attract. So can you tell me more about that? About, being concerned about things that are beyond your control? Because this is definitely something that I've noticed. A lot of people worrying about things that really they have no power to influence.
Yeah, just before I comment on that, the other important point and what you said reminded me, typically when we've gone through crises in the world, especially in America, I've noticed, we've done a good job at coming together, at helping each other, at finding strength and unity. But this crisis is a bit different because the last thing you want to do is to come together, right? You need to be away from each other, and that hurts. We are created to stick around each other, right? We're supposed to be in community. That's why church is so important. So this crisis is I think it's creating a problem that maybe we haven't really realized we had, or it's bringing this problem to the surface. Maybe a problem that we've even felt the effects of because of the social media thing and how we are constantly connected, but not really connected. I often wonder what's so social about social media. But anyway, that's another topic. But yeah, I think that's a good thought to have. And as I was responding to this question, I forgot what your question was.
Okay, so I'll talk about that a little bit, and then I'll go back to my question. So you feel like maybe this social distancing is helping us realize our need or to value more the time that we have when we come together. Because I think I get it. We used to be together but distracted. We're on the phone or, this and the other. And now that we can't be together, maybe when we are together, we're going to treasure that a lot more than we did before. Now, my question earlier was regarding, I notice a lot of people losing sleep over something that they can't influence or affect or change. What are your insights in that?
Well, again, if you spend time worrying about things that you cannot control, all you're going to do is you're going to add unnecessary stress. You're going to add an anxiety there that maybe wasn't even supposed to be there. So a good activity to do, and this is, I do this with most of my clients, especially ones who deal with depression and anxiety, is to just create a simple list, right, of, maybe 5 things in their lives that they have control over. And the answers are usually, well, I have control over my behavior, my choices, my finances. I have control over my actions. And then create a list of things that they have no control over, and that list usually, has stuff like other people's choices, or the behaviors of others, other people's thoughts and other people's opinions of me, and the weather and natural disasters and all that stuff. We have no control over that. The future or the past, right? A lot of things that we are concerned about are either in the past or in the future. Now, obviously, we can prepare for the future, but you can't make your future, right? You can't create a destiny. So a lot of people are concerned about that, and that kind of consumes them, because what if this hits me? What if? And then what if? And then if only? And then what if? And then you keep going into the unknown territory there that really won't help you. So a good activity is just to think, even if you create a mental list of the things in your life that are under your control, and you can worry about that all you want, that's fine. But the things that are beyond your control, maybe don't spend a lot of time worry about that. And if you want, you can give that to God. He can worry about that for you. He's a big guy. He can take it. He created you. He knows how to do that.
Amen. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you bring that Christian worldview into this dialogue, because it is important in dealing with all of this. Yeah. And there were some things that I heard you say before, because I caught another interview with you, and then the audio from a talk you did at a church, where you talk about fear, and when it's beneficial and when it becomes a problem. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because I think it applies to these situations as well.
Yeah, fear. So obviously fear is something we're born with, and it's a good thing, right? We're supposed to be afraid, because fear can help us to be protected, right? It helps you run away from a problem, or protect yourself, or face the problem. So there's nothing wrong with fear or anxiety, right? What happens is it starts to become a problem when that fear or that anxiety is mostly imaginary, right? You are anxious about something that may not even happen. So a good example is, if you're hiking down the woods in the trail and you see a bear, right? We have lots of bear here in New England, and it's a common thing to see. You can be afraid, right? Actually, you probably should be afraid, right? Because that fear is going to protect you. But suppose you're home and your wife or your kids, they call, hey, Dad, let's go walk on the trail. Oh no, there are bears around. Oh, I can't. So you prevent yourself from having fun with your kids because, well, you might see a bear. Well, then you're not going to live, because you might be in danger every time you leave your door, right? Every time you leave your home, you're in danger, right? So,
or even inside your home.
Even inside your home. So it becomes a problem when you start catastrophizing and you start creating scenarios that probably are not going to happen. Even here, there are a lot of bears here, but the odds of seeing a bear are very, very small. So don't prevent yourself from having fun and from living your life because of supposed, bad things that can happen. We are all in danger if you think about that.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, yeah, because I know that there are people that will avoid flying, but they don't realize driving is dangerous. Yeah. Or they'll avoid
more dangerous than flying. Yeah.
Yeah, or they'll avoid the beach because, sharks. But yeah, what are the odds? So it's interesting, finding that balance. And I think, it's important to have wisdom. But yeah, we still have to live our life, right? We can't be paralyzed by these fears. There is also something that I remember you mentioned about, what's the word now? It's, the PTSD or what causes these, you said something about
like trauma response.
Yes. Like regarding things being under your control or not under your control.
Oh, yes. So interesting. There's a book called "The Body Keeps a Score," and the author is Bessel van der Kolk. He's one of the most respected experts in trauma, and he's done a lot of work. So in his book, he tells a story of Pavlov's dogs. He's done experiments on dogs, and classical conditioning and all that stuff we've learned. But there was a
Sorry,
flood
real quick,
one day.
For people
Sure.
who don't know, could you explain real quick the classical conditioning and the
So
Pavlov's
yes, I'm
dogs?
sorry. So
I know a lot of people are familiar with it, but just in case they
Yeah. So Pavlov, he's the guy who came up with this whole classical conditioning thing, and he taught us that we can actually be conditioned or trained to expect a reward even when the thing is not there, right? So in his experiment, he used to feed the dogs, ring a bell and feed the dogs, ring the bell and feed the dogs. And pretty soon he was ringing the bell and not feeding the dogs, and the dogs were salivating because they were expecting food, right? So you can train you can train dogs or people, not to be unkind, to expect a reward, not based on the reward itself, but based on something that reminds you of the reward. So that's kind of the classical conditioning in a very easy to understand manner, right? So in this book, The Body Keeps a Score, he talks about Pavlov's dogs. One day there was a flood in his lab, right? And the dogs that were able to escape their cages did not develop trauma or panic, right? But the dogs that were stuck in their cages and they couldn't escape, even though they survived, they all developed symptoms of panic and trauma. And it's interesting because when you look at the survivors of 9/11, right, the terrorist attacks, the folks who were able to escape, they typically did not develop long-term trauma or panic. But the individuals who were stuck, maybe they needed to be rescued, and they couldn't know whether or not they were going to survive. Those usually had a much harder time with trauma and anxiety and panic. So the conclusion is that what creates panic or anxiety is not necessarily the event or the traumatic event, but it's this sense of helplessness, right? I can't do anything about this. I'm stuck here, right? And that creates, that reminds us of what maybe the media has been creating, because the media now, everywhere we turn, is coronavirus, it's COVID-19, right? Maybe the media is just reminding us of things that we can't do anything about. I mean, the whole world is unraveled in this thing, right? It's like we are handcuffed to this new reality, and this is very dangerous because this can create this sense of helplessness and even trauma and panic, right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't be informed, but we should always be balanced about this. We need to understand in our minds and accept the things that we cannot control, and give that either to God or just lay it aside. And the things you can't control, yes, you're responsible for washing your hands. You're responsible for keeping your environment clean. Of course you are, and you should be a little anxious about that. That's okay. That's not going to create panic. It's going to help you, right? But usually we are more concerned and more worried about things that are way out there that are too big for us to handle, and it creates this overload, and that's just not healthy.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about things that are under your control, and you mentioned washing your hands and doing different things. What do you find are some behaviors that help people cope with all of this? A lot of people are stuck at home. They're not going out to work. They're not going out to the gym anymore because, the gyms are closed, the workout, places. So what can people do? What are some of the things that are under our control that you think would be helpful? Some activities to engage in, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything we need to work out, you have it, right? Which is your body, right? That's all you need to exercise. So yeah, I usually go to the gym. I like the gym, but it's not open. So I go to the basement, I go outside, I go for a jog. You can be creative and exercise. And that's probably the best thing you can do under these weird times, right? Be active, exercise. That's going to boost your immunity. That's going to maybe distract you from all the problems that are going on around you. That's going to create even some new connections in your brain, so you can be more wise about this. Another thing that you can do is pick up a book, read a book, an actual paper book. There's actually a difference between reading a paper book and reading an iPad book or whatever, because you get distracted, you get text messages. Just relax, read a good book. The other thing that you can do is pray more. We hear all this good stuff about meditation and how wonderful it is for anxiety. Look at this. We have anxiety. It's going up now because of the COVID-19 crisis, and we have time. Hello. Can't we use maybe that time to meditate, to pray, maybe to read the Bible a little bit more, to read a story of, how did God help these Bible characters deal with stress and anxiety in their times, right? And maybe apply that to our lives. So we have time. God is, as he usually does, he gets a crisis and he gives us a blessing behind the crisis, right? And I think we are responsible for taking advantage of that blessing.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned something really interesting, and prayer is a thing that we're pretty big here in our church. We emphasize that a lot. And it's true. Sometimes if I can just talk about this a little bit, you get caught up with the memorized prayers. You pray for your meals. You pray, for a safe trip. You pray when you're in the airplane and you get some turbulence. You pray usually during these things. But you never actually spend that time. Usually, we don't pray as in having a conversation with God, letting him know, I'm concerned about this. Thank you for this. And actually going beyond and thinking, who are some people I could be praying for right now? Yeah. And that's one of the things, we have time. We can connect and call. For example, me and you, I've been meaning to interview for a long time. And it's just so busy. But now suddenly, there's an opportunity. We're both stuck at home and we got a chance to do this. We still had to schedule, because I know you still do a lot online and me too, trying to connect with people. But we were able to make a time for this. So there are things that we can do that are under our control, and perhaps things we haven't done before because there was no time or for whatever reasons. But now we can, like you were saying, look for that blessing. In the midst of this. We're not saying that, God is bringing this about.
Of course.
But if he permitted it and if he is with us, then there's definitely, I believe, a blessing that we can get from it. Yeah. So usually when people are struggling, what are some of the things, if somebody calls you and they're dealing with anxiety or with depression, what are some practical tips that you would give? You mentioned making the list, and I guess you talked about exercise. Is there anything else for people who might be listening that perhaps for themselves or they have someone in their family that's experiencing this? Let's say, my mom is really stressed out and she's driving everybody crazy in the house. How can we help her? What can we do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, listen. Right? You may not agree with everything, maybe the mom or anybody else says, but you have to listen, right? It's not about you. It's about them. They need to put that up. They need to at least express what their perspective is, even if their perspective may be, quote, wrong. So please listen. We do a good job at talking and pontificating, but we don't really do a good job at just listening and holding our breath. That in itself can already help. The other important thing is, if you go back to the control and no control list, one of the things that people think that they control, but they actually don't, is, the thoughts that come into their mind. You usually don't have a lot of control over that. Temptation is not a sin, right? It's a thought that comes into your mind is a thought that comes into your mind. That you don't have to believe that thought, right? So we find a lot of people who are extremely anxious because they keep thinking these bad and catastrophizing thoughts, right? They overgeneralize the bad stuff, and they maybe even ignore the good stuff. Look at all the people who are being healed. Look at all the people who are having very little symptoms of this. Even older people who are being healed, right? The media usually doesn't, cover that because, well, who cares about that? We want drama, right? So again, have a balanced perspective. Now, as far as controlling and not controlling the thoughts that come into your mind, one of the ways to deal with, example, a panic attack. A panic attack is when your thoughts go wild, right? And you're just flooded with these thoughts, and you're almost desperate because it feels like this impending doom, right? And a lot of people even go to the ER because they think they're having a heart attack. They think that they're having a stroke because their thoughts are so strong. It creates this physical response that they actually believe there's a problem. So a good start is to be an investigator for your own thoughts. Analyze which thoughts are actually in accordance with reality and which thoughts are just thoughts, right? Just things that are coming into my mind. Now, if you can't really tell, well, is this a heart attack? Is this a problem? Is this not? Try to accept those thoughts. Embrace the discomfort. Embrace this extreme pain, right? Why do I say that? When people try to stop those intrusive thoughts and those panic attacks, those attacks will last quite a while, maybe a half hour, maybe 2 hours. There is some evidence that a panic attack can last up to 24 hours. People can't sleep, and that's what drives them to the hospital. If your thoughts cannot be controlled, then don't try to control them. Mm-hmm. Accept them. When you don't try to control the thoughts that come into your mind, an average panic attack will last around 10 minutes, and then it's going to go away because you give yourself that permission. You relax.
Can you give me an example of that? Like a thought that you need to accept, and then that will help you.
Okay. I am extremely afraid. Therefore, I'm in danger. Right. This happens a lot with this coronavirus thing. I'm very afraid of what probably can happen to me. I'm very afraid that I'm going to contract this virus. I'm very afraid. So therefore, that fear creates an anxiety response, which increases your stress hormones, and then your brain, your amygdala, which is the area of the brain that's like an alarm, right? It's going off like crazy, and then you start believing that, right? Because you believe that feeling that you're in danger, you conclude, I'm in danger. Right? Now, is that true? Right? Are you really in danger? Right? Obviously not. Right? So take a break from that belief, not from the thought, because if the more you try to control the thought, the more it's going to bother you. It's like not trying to think of the green monkey, right? The more you try to do that, the worse it gets. So don't try to control it. Just accept it and know intellectually that, okay, this is just a thought. It's not a truth. It's not the truth, right? And again, a good example is, a lot of people are having a hard time sleeping, right? They have insomnia. They're worried all the time. And then they have these rituals. Well, I'm going to relax. I'm just going to relax. I'm going to lay in my bed and I'm going to relax and I'm going to sleep. So they lay on their bed and I have to sleep. Just relax, sleep, relax. Everything is good. You won't sleep, right? The more you do that, the more you try to relax yourself into sleeping, the less you're going to sleep, right? So again, don't try to fight this Goliath in your mind. Your thoughts can be very powerful, right? Accept it, give it to God. And intellectually, at least intellectually, know that this is a thought and the thought will go away. When temptation is resisted, guess what? It goes away. That's not only for, quote, sinful temptations, but your own thoughts can be in that category as well, because that's taking away your peace, your comfort.
So it would be the equivalent of saying, I'm scared, there's this dangers outside, but I'm inside my home right now. And even though I'm scared, I won't get it while I'm here. So for now, I'm safe, even though these thoughts are there.
Yeah, I'm scared, and that's what that's the thing that's happening. I'm scared, period. That doesn't mean you're in danger, right?
I see. Great. I find this very practical and helpful. And let's say somebody wants to talk to you, do you do the work that you do? Do you do sessions over the phone? I mean, people here that live in Georgia, or maybe people who are listening to this live in other places. Yeah. Would they be able to have a session with you? Would they be able to contact you how would they go about that? What's a good way to reach you if they want to do maybe some sessions with you?
Sure.
They like you, like, hey, there's a Christian counselor. I'd love to talk more to him. I have these other things that we didn't discuss on our interview here, but where could they contact you?
So there was a website called charactercounseling.com. And I chose that title just to explain why that title, character counseling. If you read the research, or if you're interested in any of that stuff, the past 10, 15 years, it's interesting that a lot of the problems that have been increasing are character problems, like character disturbances, like where people are not feeling guilty enough, they just don't care, it's just this carelessness. So that's a character issue. So that's one of the reasons why I said, let's do character, because that's the thing now, right? That's in. So it's charactercounseling.com. Email is Andre, A-N-D-R-E, at charactercounseling.com. And even if you Google Andre Costa therapist on Psychology Today, which is one of the biggest websites for therapy and psychology, I'm on there as well. Yes, I do some online counseling. Although I have an office, I see quite a number of people that are not near where my office is. So we do online therapy. It's a little bit of a different approach just because we're not in the office. But yeah, that is an option. A lot of the younger folks, they're already used to, doing stuff online anyway. So they think it's fun. I'm talking to a therapist online.
And now due to the virus, I guess,
yes,
we're moving more and more online anyway.
Yeah. So the virus, the last couple of weeks and probably the next couple of weeks at least, I'll be doing all my sessions online just, to keep everybody safe.
And that's wonderful. That's good to know, because sometimes, I feel the need to refer people. Because I try to explain to them, look, I'm a pastor. I'm not, a counselor. I'm not licensed. I can't help you. And they said, well, where is a good Christian counselor? And I'm glad that you are available. And you can do you do any other languages? Well, I guess you're Brazilian, right? So.
I'm Brazilian, yes, Portuguese and English. Now, I have had some questions about Spanish. A lot of people assume that because we speak Portuguese, we speak Spanish, and unfortunately, that's not my gift. My wife speaks Spanish, but I can't do it. So I've even tried. Let's try this. And with therapy, you want to be able to express yourself. You want to be able to know how to define your terms, how to explain things, and how to listen well. Mm-hmm. So for the ethical purposes, I do not do therapy in Spanish.
No, I get it, because, sometimes I can have a short conversation with someone in Spanish. And they're like, oh, come and preach. I'm like, no, that's very different.
Yeah. Right.
I can say, how are you? Where is the bathroom? That's very different than...
and it's funny, I can read a book in Spanish, right? And you can understand pretty much everything. But don't ask me to, interact and talk. And that's right. Like pulling teeth, It's
I get it. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Who knows? Maybe we'll do this again in the future.
Yeah.
I appreciate the insights and the practical tips, and thank you for the work that you do. May God continue to bless you in that. I know it's a ministry, and I know you also accept invitations to speak at churches, because I've watched you sort of stalking you online. And maybe we'll have you over here once you're free to travel again. We'll work on that in the future. But thank you so much, Andre, and that's charactercounseling.com is your website, and your email is Andre, A-N-D-R-E, at charactercounseling.com, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful.
And I also want to thank you, actually, for all the wonderful work that you've been doing. I know you are an influencer, and it's a blessing to, first of all, have you as part of my family. That's amazing, right? I'm proud of that. I'll have your signature one day, So thank you for the kind words. And, we're in this battle together, we're in this ship together. We're here learning with each other. And, our purpose is to reach the same home.
That's right. Amen. And it's great. I appreciate having you, and the fact that we can get together and pick each other's brains sometimes. And thank you for sharing. And until next time.
Amen. Thank you. Pleasure's all mine. Have a great one.